we certainly should feel encouraged.
We're just missing half the skills, the talent, the views, the humanity that we so badly need at the moment.
Well, welcome. It's always wonderful to sit here with a woman who just gets up in the morning, does her yoga, throws on her Hermes scarf, and then goes off and solves the economies of everybody else in the world. So thank you so much for coming, Christine. And we've obviously got to start with the current mayhem, right? You know, tariffs, right? President Trump's tweet said, trade wars are good and easy to win. And this morning, the EU president responded, the truth is, trade wars are bad and easy to lose. So who's right in this tweet fest?
Well, and I said, I thought you would have quoted me.
Well, I'm waiting for you to do it again. You've made your statement, I know.
No, and I said, in trade wars, there are no winners. Everybody is losing.
Right.
So
There's
I hope
no-
I reconcile the two and convince them that there is no point doing it.
Right, so there's no one who's going to win. So things, I mean, obviously that it's roiling our allies and adversaries near and far. I mean, what is going to be the fallout, do you think, geopolitically now when all of the kind of posturing is over?
You know, I honestly hope that honestly hope that people are going to come to the table, because in trade there is no way around it unless everybody loses. So what is really needed is that all parties come to the table and decide to actually discuss the terms that some think are uneven, unfair, illegitimate, a breach and violation of this, that, or the other. Because if that is the sentiment of some, it has to be discussed, it has to be determined, it has to be verified, tested, facts, figures, numbers, impact, consequences, spillover effects, you name it. But it has to be done in a cooperative fashion. It cannot be arbitrarily, unilaterally decided. And that's certainly our recommendation. Come to the table and let's try to address these issues, because there are issues. You know, we cannot say that trade is beautiful. No. We need to understand exactly what the consequences are, whether people are left to the side of the road and what can be done about it. And we have to understand whether the rules of the road are actually respected by all drivers. And if some are not, then decisions need to be made cooperatively.
Well, the president has hinted that he might go after China next for theft of intellectual property. And do you think that the US has been too passive about that? Really flagrant theft by China of our intellectual property, ongoing.
Again, I think this can only be determined by actual facts and honest, candid assessment. It cannot be just, you cannot just affirm that somebody is violating property, intellectual property laws. You have to get down to the actual fact. You know, I'm a lawyer by background, so I might be torn by that background, but you start with the facts, and then if the facts are proving you're right, then you move to the next stage. But it starts with that, and yeah, this needs to be examined. And if there is a trend, then, and if many companies around the world feel and demonstrate with facts that there has been a theft of intellectual property rights, then it has to be considered, and it has to be avoided for the future, for trade to continue on an even playing field, on a level playing field, and in an even-handed manner. That's what I meant to say.
Well, we're on the eve of International Women's Day tonight, and I was fascinated actually by this blog post that you just wrote, because you said that sexual harassment at work is one of the key factors that prevents countries from tapping the full economic potential of women, and that you have some very interesting new data to prove that, which is a very interesting study. We'd love you to talk about that.
I actually brought it for you. I brought 2
Perhaps you
copies.
could give me the executive summary. Thank you.
What we tried to do in that really well-researched and documented paper is to try to establish the correlation between discriminations against women, including having to do with sexual harassment, and access to finance. And we find very strong correlation between the two. In other words, in countries where there are laws to protect women against sexual harassment, and the level of discrimination against women is low, access to finance for them is high. And that is really strongly documented. Equally, on the other hand, and a contrario, if you will, when there are discriminations that are embedded in the law, when there is no protection against sexual harassment, you have less and sometimes very, very low access to finance. I mean, it's in significant percentages, and now you can debate about the causality, but I think that the numbers and the facts are pretty strong and speak for themselves. So bottom line, if women have access to finance, it requires that laws that discriminate against them be eliminated. It requires that they be protected legally against sexual harassment. I'll give you another piece of data which is really interesting. We studied about 150 countries and found, to my great surprise, because that included OECD countries, advanced, emerging and low-income countries, we found that in 90% of them, 90, they are either in the constitution, in the law, or in uses and customs, which in some countries actually is worth a lot more than the law, discriminations against women, inequalities that are rooted in the legal system. And that's where it all begins. Some people might have said, actually, "Oh, doesn't matter, it's the legal." No, it does matter. And we've also seen it in the case of various countries. Peru was one, Malawi was one, where when the law changed, within a matter of 5 years, you saw the difference in terms of female labor participation. You saw the difference in terms of access to finance. You saw the difference in terms of reduction of the gap between men and women. So it's really, really fascinating. And I believe that there is a strong link. You stop me when I talk too much.
No, I'm interested. I mean, I will, but I'm actually fascinated by this.
I think that there is a really, and that's not demonstrated by empirical and analytical work, but there is a strong link between access to finance, contribution to the economy, participation and empowerment, and the sexual harassment phenomenon. I was both shocked and really pleased to see the development of Me Too and other similar sites in other countries of the world. And I'm very pleased to see that some people are now moving into what do we do? We scream, we protest, we cry, but what do we do? And I think that the answer goes through economic empowerment, very much so.
That is, I think, incredibly important because, as you said, there has been a lot of venting and what is the granular things that women have to do to see things change. Do you think that the Me Too movement, though, is going to have global impact? And is there anything that we can really do to take the momentum to countries where women have so little agency over how they're treated?
I think it's an international movement. I mean, it has huge resonance in this country because of the film industry, because of the media coverage, which is very country-centric in a way. But if you travel to other countries, it has resonated there too. When I look at my country in France, there has been equivalent spreading protest and hash various things in French, which I'll spare you. And I think there was a young man in China recently who got in a matter of 1 day 3 million followers, young man, but he had been sexually harassed, and his case became, a big story in the country. And those are things that you would never have seen before if that movement had not started. So in many places, what happened in the US and in other countries is known in those other countries, and in many of those countries, a similar movement has taken place. And I think we need to follow through, It will never be the same again, and not just here, but everywhere.
Well, in 2016, you and 16 current and former French ministers actually signed a scathing statement against sexism. That's 2 years ago, saying, impunity is over, we will no longer be silent. Can I ask if you've ever had a Me Too experience? I mean, this...
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Sure. But, you know, I'm 5'10", okay? And I'm pretty strong. So I think I have... I've avoided many instances where it could have happened, simply because either
People
they were
don't
too
mess with you.
small or too narrow, or and but yes, I did have, you know, I had, you know, I was a lawyer for 20 years of my life, and you know, there are instances where either clients feel that, okay, you're a lawyer, you can dispense services, all sorts of them, and you know, as I said, I was in my personal physical situation sometimes strong enough to just bash.
Batter them away. Well, I mean, the interesting thing I think is now really is that, you know, so many of the things that affect women's lives are actually granular rather than big picture, as we know. I mean, the lack of childcare in Italy, or the fact that in Egypt, you know, the sexual harassment is so bad on public transport that women have to kind of carpool to work.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you feel?
Can I tell you something about Egypt?
Yeah.
Because we are. There's a program between the IMF and Egypt, which has to do with deficit reduction, revenue mobilization, balance of payment, and all those things that the IMF is in charge of. But in that particular program, in the memorandum of understanding that we signed with the country, we asked, you know, gender-specific measures, and in particular in relation to transportation. We ask that the government actually commits resources to improving transportation for women in order to protect them from harassment. And this is one of the conditions that they have to satisfy to access funding.
Well, that's an example of whether you've been able to really make a concrete difference. That is fantastic. Bravo on that. What else can be done, though, in terms of this granular kind of approach that you've just said? I mean, you talked about how Me Too can also be, you know, talking, and it's great that the social media movement has happened. But where do you think that we need to raise it to so that we all know what the goals are? Because I think simply, if it just becomes simply a movement of passion and social media, then it's obviously not achieving these concrete things.
I think it has to move to the to what do we do? What action do we take? And you know, everybody is going to have to propose their answers and their proposals, and it has to be debated. And women have to be a major voice in that discussion. Not the only one. I think men have to participate in that debate. But my suspicion is that it will require much more women empowerment, a much bigger role in the economy and in leadership positions, number one. Number two, I think those issues have to be debated, and they have to be sort of gone through at school as part of the educational process. And people have to learn to respect each other. And that starts very early on. Third, I think that on the workplace, we need to invent mechanism by which those harassed, men or women, have a conduit, can actually reach out to people, can be heard. I think that's critically important. And this sort of mediation process by which you, number one, you are listened, you are cared about, and then a solution is identified, is also something that is critically important. Mm-hmm. We're trying to put that in. We have actually started doing that at the IMF, where we have peers that are nowhere in the hierarchy in particular, but who are volunteering and have been trained to actually listen to people who feel harassed. It's usually work-related harassment. It's like, you know, provide that report by tonight, and it doesn't matter if it's 11:30 at night and you have children. So that is not acceptable either. And there has to be a way to, you know, sort of stop that.
Well, you've had a very long and a good working relationship with Chancellor Angela Merkel, and you know, lately she has been greatly weakened, but now she has indeed triumphed again and got her coalition. Tell me your experience of Merkel and how you feel you know, she has come out of this most recent crisis.
first of all, I knew that she would put it together, and I knew that she would win because she's a determined, relentless, not fighter. She's more of a builder. She wants to put things together. She wants things to work, and I think she has yet again demonstrated that. What most people have not noticed actually is that in the current political situation in Germany, and I think some credit should go to her, the three key political parties in Germany are now led by women. The three of them. Only the CSU is not led by women, but the other three major parties are led by women. And the cabinet around her is almost 50% women. So in a country where there has been a lot of perfectly justified complaints about the fact that women did not have the benefit of good childcare systems, where schools finished way too early in the day for women to actually have full-time work, and where there was an implied discrimination, although the numbers do not speak for that because there is a lot of part-time and therefore numbers look on the surface reasonably good. But in a country where the role of women needs to be improved thanks to policies, I think it's heading in the right direction. And with many women in leadership position, I think there is hope that we will see major improvement.
Mm-hmm. Well, Neil Ferguson actually said that recently in a column that he thought Chancellor Merkel's decision to allow more than 1 million immigrants into Germany would be seen as the mother of all blunders. Do you think that he could prove to be right? Do you think this was, in fact, is going to be seen as something that has been a very negative for Germany, or will you think you see the country emerging from that in a different way?
I very much hope that thanks to the resilience and the policies put in place in Germany, that country can demonstrate that this incredibly generous openness that was demonstrated at the time is actually proving successful and efficient. More than 1 million people were accepted in 1 year, and I think now it's about 200,000 per year. But the way in which they're trying to bring them into the fold, to give them the teaching, the training, the adjustment that is needed to be inserted in German society is actually, showing an incredible solidarity and humanity in a country that can actually do so. And it's not the only option. It's not the only solution. And there has to be investment in African countries. And actually, Chancellor Merkel has started. When she was president of the G20 2 years ago, she started a program called Compact with Africa, which is a concerted effort to bring foreign direct investment, to encourage the private sector, to encourage the local governments to actually put in place the policy and the business-friendly environment to welcome those investments in order to root development at home, in order to create the jobs at home, and in order to incentivize the young people who are many in many of those countries to actually see their future at home. Now, that's a great initiative in most countries. In those countries where you have conflict, where you have massive drought, it's not sufficient. But it has to be combined with the policies that she has advocated and which clearly she had to temper and adjust over the course of time.
Well, you've always juggled so much yourself as a world-beating, alpha woman. I attended one of the smaller sessions that you appeared at Davos, where, of course, you were a chairman, right? I mean, you were the chairman this year of an all-woman group.
It was an all-woman co-chairmanship, yeah.
In fact, I'd like to just show a visual of that because I wondered whether or not, if the world community looked like this, things might be a better place. Let's have a look at that picture. Where's that picture? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good... If the next G20 looked like that, right, would the world be working better?
Oh, of course. No. I qualify that because I very strongly believe in diversity. We cannot exclude. No. Many of us have been excluded in some circles, and it's not the way to go. But if it was half-half, that'd be good.
That's like Angela Merkel's doing. Well, in that setting in Davos, though, you did say something that interested me very much, because it couldn't be further from matters of GDP, right? You said, be open to love. And it was very interesting that you suddenly said that. And I wondered what had prompted you to say it and what you were thinking about when you said that at Davos, be open to love.
I think we're short of love. And for me, it has been what has fueled my confidence and my energy. And what's more needed than confidence and energy for us individually, for governments, for countries, and for me it has been fueled by love. It's the love that I received from parents, from brothers, from companions, husbands, children, just you name it. It's this and it's not in exactly the same sense, but even when I work with my staff, with my team, I know that I'm receiving love, and I hope to give it too. And it's a completely reciprocated process where you encourage, you give confidence to others, you entrust them, you communicate your energy, and it helps them move forward and better develop themselves and accomplish what they can accomplish. So I think love is this burning energy that helps all of us go forward. Yeah.
Well, you now have a partnership, a lasting partnership with a businessman who in your life, who's based in Marseille. How do you manage your private life? You've had now, you're used to these commuter partnerships.
Good looking, huh?
Yeah. No, he is undoubtedly a very hunky. I understand what gets you on that plane. Let's just put it that way. When we come
he comes too. Huh?
And he comes too.
Yeah.
But I'm fascinated that you've managed to do this all the way through your life, really, because when you were married, you had 2 sons, and then you took the job at Baker Botts in Chicago, where they stayed
Baker
in Paris.
McKenzie.
Baker McKenzie, I beg your pardon, Baker McKenzie. They stayed in Paris. You worked and you came back and forth. You have managed to maintain these very sort of warm partnerships and relationships while commuting. How do you manage that?
New technologies actually help a great deal now. Well, 2 things I'll say. One is, I don't think that I would be very good at managing a relationship where we both deal with the day-to-day nitty-gritty details of everyday's life. And I think that for me, it works better that we actually have that time to ourselves together, but maybe in a less quantitative way, but in a much more focused and qualitative way. And that works for him, it works for me, and it's just beautiful. Second thing I would say is that it has not discouraged my children, because my youngest son is actually getting married in 10 days.
Mm-hmm, wonderful.
So,
and you have grandchildren as well with
yes.
Yeah, and how is that changing your life?
Oh, it's it's yet more love, and it's more love that I give and more love that I receive, and it's just enriching my life, and I hope to give them and by helping them along the way. One is 5, 3, and 1, so I still have a long time to help and give and help them learn and become great individuals.
Oh, what do you say now to young women who are, as always, really they want to be Christine Lagarde, but they also, of course, they do want to have families and children. And what is your message, in a way, to young women who still struggle with this very kind of insoluble problem that continues? However much we evolve and change and so on, it is always going to be a very big issue for women.
I'd say 2 things. I'd say you can have it all, but not necessarily all at the same time. And, I made partnership at Baker McKenzie later than I would have had I not had 2 children along the way. But that's okay, and I'm very happy that I was kept waiting. That's okay, I don't mind. So we can have it all, not always at the same time. That's something that I strongly believe in. And maybe we can, fight all along to make sure that we can have it all at the same time. I'm not convinced myself. And I took great pleasure in breastfeeding and in taking time off to be with my baby boys. And I'd say 2 things. Don't try to conform to the standard, to do it exactly the way your mother or your grandmother have done it. You can invent your own way of, being yourself and accomplishing everything that you can accomplish. And you don't have to be like me, and you don't have to be like Tina, who is just the most accomplished person in the world. You just have to find your own path and feel good with yourself.
All right. Well, Christine Lagarde, thank you so much. You're such an accomplished woman, and one we all admire so much. Really. Thank you.